go to the State Ethics Commission. Because I've used them when I was working, I'd have some like customers or clients, and I always got a ruling. You know, I was on the board of the medical center and they were looking to do something.
Right.
They said as long as, I think the Alien Food was there, as long as they're okay. But they were very quick getting back to me, they're very good. If you have any conflict issues.
I think my situation is that I can't.
Okay, 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion to open the meeting of the Holyoke Planning Board.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're open. Just for the information of our visitors, this is a public meeting, it is not a public hearing, so we won't be able to take any comments or new information from anyone. But we are being recorded, and, you know, welcome, hope it's enlightening. And our first order of business tonight is the zone change for the Greater YMCA, 399 Appleton Street, DR to BC. This is a petition for a zone change. We closed our hearing at the last joint meeting with the Ordinance Committee of the City Council. And would anyone other than me like to start off the discussion here?
Do we have a side-by-side of what the two zones are?
If you don't in your packet, I can provide one, or I can get you one.
We all have zoning charts, don't we?
You should.
Yeah.
Just the two together. You want just the two together?
I just want to go over again
Here.
side-by-side.
They're kicked off here.
Okay.
I know we did them last time, you're out.
I'm supposed to run a highlighter down?
No, I don't mind. Actually, what are the two that we, because this is the other piece, the other thing that was.
It's,
DR and BC.
DR and BC, yeah.
Okay, so DR and B, this is, oh, no, that's BC, no, that's BG, okay, yep.
Well, while we wait for the vote up, one thing that I think we should start off with here, which I think also is clear in everybody's mind from our last discussion, is this is a petition for a zone change. And the place to start and end is with the general principles that control how land use is governed and what the zoning rules are. I think that in this case, it is, for good or ill, actually an extremely straightforward decision when you look at those basic rules. But I don't want to run over everybody else.
Are you talking about spot zoning?
Spot zoning, the principles that courts generally look at in determining whether something is an impermissible spot zone. The existence of a newly adopted redevelopment plan that calls for quite a different kind of development in the affected area. The fact that really the case for the zone change is based on the needs of one specific applicant and on their contributions to Holyoke as a whole, which is precisely the kind of thing that we are always warned not to take into account when deciding on what the use of the property should be, and which we have had some unpleasant accusations from the city council about doing too much of it. And I think we should definitely think very carefully before we validate any of those accusations. But beyond even that, and that's not really the point so much as this is a classic spot zoning case. Every single factor that courts normally look at when determining whether something is an impermissible spot zone is in play here. It's a small parcel. Massachusetts courts are much more likely to decide to let a spot zone go if it's a multi-acre parcel. It doesn't abut any, it doesn't abut the requested zone at any edge at all. It is, again, one of the things that makes it much more likely the courts will invalidate a spot, a change of zone. There is a plan that calls for a different kind of land use that was adopted recently after full consultation, you know, that also cuts against the permissibility of doing this.
Say that again? I'll be a little more specific.
Well, courts like to sit and take into account what a plan of community is.
No, I know, I know the big thing that you're talking about, like, what's the thing you just said?
Oh, just that, the fact that we have a use plan.
The land use plan, our land use plan,
Our
that's
land
what you're
use
talking
plan,
about, yeah.
and
Okay.
it was voted on in the last couple of years, it's not an antique plan. And it was adopted after a lot of consultation and expensive consultation with the community.
Right. That's what you're, we're
Yeah.
speaking of, the land use plan, okay.
Yeah, and all of those are things that the courts tend to look at when they decide whether something is not only a spot zone, but a bad spot zone that you really shouldn't do. And, you know, I sympathize with the parking issue, but when you take all those things into account, and you also look at the fact that we, you know, ask people to come and participate in these land use surveys. We have another big one coming up with the Mount Tom reuse study. We probably have others in development. You know, we ask for people to come forward and make their petitions known. We consult them. You know, it really sends a very bad message, it seems to me, to go through that process, adopt something, and then overrule it 2 years later because somebody who we happen to really like comes along and says, well, we need to do something different now. I mean, what's the point of even joining? You know, what's the point of being a member of the community? And we do that too much in Holyoke. I mean, all the sympathy in the world doesn't change
Well,
the facts.
yeah, I was just gonna say, I think sometimes in Holyoke, and this is a classic example, I think, you know, where I would tend to think with my heart, I am seated here, charged with the job of not necessarily doing that, you know.
Yeah.
And I know that I have given this a lot of thought, and I, you know, have, you know, I know that some of us have talked to the city planners about other options that the YMCA might have to, you know, to add parking, not to tell the YMCA for sure what to do, but, you know, just to know that you did have other options. I don't know. John?
Well, I think like all of us, you kind of give this a lot of thought, and I've given an awful lot of thought. And I hear the issues relative to spot zoning, I hear the issues relative to land use, and I think there sometimes are situations where you've got to also look a little bit maybe beyond some of those constraints from time to time. And, you know, quite frankly, maybe some people recall there was a time when the Holyoke Y was looking to move to South Hadley. And Holyoke Y expanded. Holyoke Y actually took possession of a street that was nothing but a headache for the city of Holyoke as far as some of the things taking place, particularly after dark on that street, closed it off, put a daycare center there. They purchased a small doctor's office that had closed and expanded as much as they could. I'd hate to think what that neighborhood would be like today if the Y had not been there. And quite frankly, I even had a discussion with a young mother just recently yesterday who said to me, you know, I bring my children to the Y for swimming lessons, and you know, now that days are shorter, I go down there sometimes a bit at dark, and she said the lot is filled. She says, quite frankly, you know, we really want to see that lot across the street because I'm not going to park 2 blocks or 3 blocks away and not even walk with children. So I kind of look at this, I call it kind of, just from my perspective, my kind of common sense approach to it. And you know, master plan, all the Y is an integral part of certainly that community, that neighborhood, and that kind of the master plan. And it is so close; it's just across Pine Street from where the Y is. And I look at the work they're doing also, for all the rehab that takes place here at the rehab center next to the Y, where people are going because of certain injuries, et cetera, that they're being helped on. And if it wasn't there, then I think of the thousands of people a week, literally, that are coming to that section of our city. They're being drawn there because of the Y. And as much as I will remind everybody that we don't do zone changes in favor of a specific owner, et cetera, I certainly hope we will not see the Y go anywhere at all, that they will continue to be an integral part of the community. So as much as I hear all the other arguments, I weigh that very heavily too. I weigh what they've meant to the neighborhood, to the community, what they've done, quite honestly, to kind of clean up part of that community over the years. And we're talking a small piece of real estate adjacent to them. And if nothing is done, it'll just sit there as a vacant lot.
If I may, one footnote to that is we may be talking about a small piece of property now. If we change that zone, we basically blow up the entire adjacent property.
Well,
we know that the Y was in negotiation for other property, and that's why they waited to do this zone change.
right.
As soon as we change that zone, the argument for not expanding that zone designation is very much undermined, because now anything adjacent to that becomes part of that zoning district.
It may.
And
It may.
it goes south, it is over the line of the redevelopment thing. And I appreciate the good work, but does that give them, or give any party, a license in perpetuity to have special consideration and overrule a settled policy of the city?
What did we do with the Holyoke Medical Center that would expand parking lots over the years?
I had no idea.
Well,
I wasn't there then.
You know, they've expanded, they've asked for zone changes in the past.
No, hospital use is allowed within the R2 district, so
Okay,
therefore
right.
any accessory use to it's allowed, so.
They ran up into obvious some opposition, but I mean, the point is, they're able to do that. I know that's the Council on Aging, of course, they're expanded, they have the land. But anyway, you know, it is what it is. I know if you go down Appleton Street, you've got a church next door to where that lot is. You have the daycare in the church, et cetera. I mean, that section of Pine Street there's not, tons of homes there at all, quite frankly. So anyway, that's where I'm at with it. Others are entitled to their positions, I'm sure.
Given a lot of thought like everybody else. In a tough spot, want to do the right thing, but why is institution of this city that has meant a lot to me in my life and to a lot of people in this city. 21 parking spaces in a lot that's already way overcrowded. The design looks nice, landscaped well. I think they need to be held to that. I'm not trying to blow up the master plan of the city, but
No, I know you're not. It's just I am really, the Y is such a good institution for the city. They've been here so long. It's just not a consideration we're supposed to be taking into account here. It gets us into trouble all the time. This is how we wound up with the Y situation. It is how we wound up with our little fight with the ordinance committee a month ago. It is the epitome of what we're not supposed to be thinking about.
I have a hard time doing that. Maybe
Yeah,
I shouldn't be.
I do as well.
Maybe I shouldn't be in this room then, because I have a hard time not thinking about the YMCA in my lifetime and the lifetime of several people that I've known, hundreds of people, and the good work that it's done, and the fact that they're not, my issue is, to do it and then to potentially expose other pieces of property, because I have a lot of respect for those that, such as the woman that is here tonight. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, and the gentleman who's come in his has had, operating the apartments. I think Stephen Bosco, is that his name? You know,
There's also the resident that lives in there for
there
50
is,
years,
and,
that had nothing but,
that's
so
right.
there's a balance as far as I agree with you.
But, my issue is that those people are what Holyoke needs as well. And we need the Y, but we need people to be coming in and feeling good about where they're living and what they're doing and what's going on around them. I just,
No, and I respect that, it's just the founding principle is a government of laws, not men. You're not supposed to get a different set of rules because of who you are.
Just, if I could, I'm reading through the allowed uses for both DR and BC. One that jumps out at me is under exempt or institutional use. Use of land for structures for educational purposes on land. If they were to put a playground there, even on part of it, they'd be allowed parking accessory to that playground, wouldn't they? Jeff?
I, at this point, can't answer that. One could assume.
I thought that came up in the public hearing, and I think someone said that they would be able to put parking there if they put a daycare there.
I don't have what the entire site looks like in my head as far as where their existing playground is.
Neither do I, although I remember there was some commentary at the last public hearing about the existence of a playground that could possibly be swapped to that site.
Well, that's what I was speaking to, but, I mean, that's presumptuous of us to
Yeah.
tell them,
Yeah.
what
Well,
to
no,
do.
I know it's hard to.
But on the other hand, I think that the YMCA has been, an incredibly important and respected with good reason, member of our community, and because of that, I think that, that they are afforded, they should be afforded some trust, that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And while I know that, I'm really, really torn about this, because, I understand that it's, we are not supposed to zone for the project, we're supposed to zone for the zone.
So, as I said in our last meeting, everything that's gone on with the property, with the Y, and everything else, we should be setting aside to look strictly
No,
at the zone.
absolutely.
And it is spot zone, there's no
Yeah.
doubt, there's
But
no way around that.
across the street from it is a parking lot.
Yeah, and the line has to be someplace.
Yeah. I'm still curious, I have since heard that the city does in fact own the street and fee, not an easement.
I know that it's a
That's an
artificial
interesting
line,
loophole.
but, yeah.
What difference does that make?
If the city owned an easement, the Y would own the land under the easement, and therefore would be an adjacent property to the Y, and this conversation would not be occurring,
Okay,
because they would have it by right.
yeah.
No, I know it's tough, and I do trust them to do what they say. I just, I don't know, what,
This isn't
trust is irrelevant.
an institution that's gonna go away next week.
No, that's the thing, they haven't, and they didn't, and thank goodness they didn't.
I guess that's why I lean more, as much as I say with other zone changes, you're right, go back to the big Y, where we said publicly, I know I did more than once. When I changed retail for a big Y, we could have a different owner, big Y, 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years down the road, it's for retail purposes. However, listening to other comments, and I agree, this Y is not likely to be going anywhere. It's been
No.
around for a long time. It's been an anchor it's been anchored to this community, it's done so much good to this community. I guess that's where I tend to look at it a little differently, maybe. Others would disagree with it, but that's why I look at it. That's why I get to where I get with it, you know?
Yeah, I just,
Um,
as I've said, that it's just not an okay consideration to use for this.
Here are the things that we would be allowing by the change. We would be allowing non-exempt education, veterinary clinic, funeral home, hotel, fast food restaurant, bank, medical office or medical clinic under 2,500 square feet, by special permit, drive-through, commercial parking, or a taxi bus terminal. How big is this property?
That, I think, is, again, irrelevant what we would be allowing. What's relevant is that it changes the zone and allows that zone to expand when we already know that the Y is in fact looking to expand in that direction, wants more parking there, and we have a plan that we adopted as city policy very recently that calls for commercial and residential use there. So this is a wonderful institution. It's also a tax-exempt institution. And opening the door when the policy was already decided for the city as a whole after full consultation. You know, and when you look at this and yeah, it's a spot zone by every consideration that ever goes into spot zoning. I just, you know, I think to the extent that any of us are bound to follow the law, you know, we have guidance we should follow, and it speaks in one direction. And if we put aside everything that the Y is, as you know, I agree we should be doing, that's where it comes out. And I think the reason that this is hard is that there isn't a lot of ambiguity in the usual zoning rules. So, you know, this is just, you know, what we will live with going forward. We have a bunch of other difficult zone change petitions that we know are coming in front of us. And we are going to have people asking for a spot zone up in Ward 7 and people objecting to it. We may have two of them depending on the new school situation, which I haven't really examined. And I think the leash school.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also that lot on Hampton and Pleasant.
Oh, right.
And we're gonna have people coming to us saying, you know, you ignored the spot zoning rules for this application. How come we can't get the same consideration for our gas station? Or our whatever it is? And it's going to be difficult. You know, are we in fact doing this because we like one applicant and we don't like others?
We can't.
Just understanding, don't mind me. It's nice that they had to take this in the margin. Unfortunately, I would probably use the case law. I don't have that.
Well, one thing to look at too is all these other situations of dealing with for-profit entities versus non-profit.
Cuts both ways.
It could cut both ways, but, you know, just to keep that as one perspective. And the final decision, of course, we know is up to the city council. We're just gonna make a recommendation.
Yeah, because that certainly is true. No matter what we do, the city council is entitled to ignore us.
So go through section 9A, I would point
As they
out
so
that
frequently do.
at least this parking lot, there's 5 zones that allow a parking lot. This is the only one that doesn't also allow an adult use.
Well, no, I mean, again, the Y did try to find one that would be as acceptable as possible. It's just, you know, a bad spot to be asking for this kind of zone change. And it also is true that if you look back a few years, I think at very margins of when I joined the planning board, there was a citywide discussion about expanding parking uses downtown as well as up on Mount Tom in connection with Eric Schur's property. And the city council rejected a policy proposal to make it easier to expand parking uses downtown. I mean, they've rejected more parking downtown as a policy twice in recent years. And, you know, they didn't say, for people we like special rules.
Is there anything that appears relevant? I just wanted to make sure nothing jumped out at me. So everybody got their mind made up, one way or the other?
So make some motion, we'll know soon.
What we call the question. I have no idea which way it's gonna go, but let's,
Well, okay.
do if we vote.
Somebody wanna make a motion?
I move that we, I can't decide. Which way I wanna make the motion. John?
Okay, someone's gotta do this. I'll make a motion that we approve the zone change request to the Holyoke YMCA from DR to BC.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I.
Aye.
Nay, nay,
Aye.
nay.
No.
What was the
No.
vote?
All
I'm
in
just,
favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Two-
Aye.
2 in favor, 2
Aye.
opposed.
wait a minute.
No.
No. Those in favor say, raise your hands, those in favor. Okay, there's 4.
Okay.
Are you in favor?
Yes.
4 in favor, 1 opposed.
So moved.
So the vote is recommend
The vote is to recommend,
to the
Aye.
Council Ordinance Committee to approve the zone change request.
and just for the
I
record,
don't even know where that vote came from, but
It didn't seem like it was the same vote both times.
it was, for me it was.
Oh, no, I'm not saying you're saying others.
okay,
It's interesting.
and, just for the record, I think that this is a really unjustified decision, and I will be writing a formal dissent to go to the city council.
Fine.
And I just don't know procedurally, do I sign off on the final recommendation, or do we get a dissent, or do we get a majority member to do it?
I don't know where to go with that. Typically, it's been our board chair who signs off on that.
You're signing off on the vote, you're not signing off, you know, you can put
Yeah.
that.
I can look into that though.
Okay, on to planning board business. Do we have any project updates, old business, new business?
Well, for what it's worth, in your packets or in front of you, you've got the plans for Mark Ford at 933 Main Street, as well as the Holyoke Hotel plans number 2 for your review for our next meeting, which will be 11/25, that we've got public hearings scheduled to hear both of those. As far as other business, or rather project updates, if there's something specific that you want to know about, I can perhaps let you know. If not, I've got nothing necessarily new to share.
Meeting schedule, we have a meeting schedule.
I don't see a problem making any meetings.
I said, the only one I can't make is December 9th.
Correct. The only other issue that we're going to have on for the 25th is that the ordinance committee scheduled at the same time as we have scheduled a continuance for the auto uses. They also scheduled a special permit hearing for Marcotte Ford to allow the auto use at 9:33. So it's a kind of a strange, we're kind of going to be tripping over them. The fact that we had scheduled an hour-long meeting for the auto use discussion, now they're also scheduling other things to be heard, because that night at 7:30 we've got Marcotte Ford. So it's just a strange overlap that's been created by the ordinance committee.
Well, I think at this point, for our discussion with Rebecca, we have to tell them, no, we can't do it. And if they have to continue, so be it.
Okay. Like I said, it's the auto use continuance that we're supposed to be down there for 6:30 to begin with. So whether or not they finish us early and take Marcotte shortly thereafter, or whatever, we can see how their scheduling is that evening. But I'll be also speaking to Rebecca tomorrow. So.
Yeah, they have to start coordinating with us better.
Right. Correct.
As we discussed.
Right. And then the other thing too, I know I'd emailed you. We've got some other projects coming in for our December 23rd meeting. So, and one's here again, it's a strange overlap because one of them was our Lyman Terrace continuance, but the ordinance committee also scheduled a similar hearing, or rather the special permit hearing discussion at the same time as our meeting was already scheduled. So we have another overlapping meeting on the 23rd as well. In addition to another, the Pride Station will be in that evening also.
Yes, yes, and this seems the time to bring it up. I did have a meeting with Rebecca Lucy and an attempt to sort out some of these issues with the ordinance committee. I think we were under the impression that we were going to attempt to coordinate all of the joint hearings for a specific date and a specific time on that date, and that we were going to do it once a month rather than whenever the ordinance committee felt like doing it. And we were going to have actual times for these things, and if necessary, just say if we had budgeted, say, an hour for a given hearing, after the hour, we were going to have to continue it. And as a result of that, we were going to ask that applicants and proponents and actual members of the public speak first, as opposed to having the side discussion with city council members who happen to show up. And, again, if they got bumped, that was so be it, because we can't continue to have these cross scheduling issues. It now appears that things are continuing from their end exactly as they were before we had the meeting.
Right. Well, like in the case of the special permit discussion, that was something that we had heard last. Perhaps was it in early October when they continued it out that far? And there was just that it's a strange overlap that we've got between when Lyman Terrace was continued as well. And again, this auto-related use one, that was something else that was continued from, it might have been September till now. So again, it was just another strange overlap. But hearing that they had also scheduled Marcotte for their special permit hearing, knowing that we already had the auto-related special permit discussion, it's just odd that they went ahead and did that. So
yeah, and if we can accommodate them just
right.
once, fine, but we can't
right.
continue to do it.
Right.
That's so strange that
Yeah, well, I think they have communication issues that we don't have.
was the meeting adversarial, if I may be so bold?
No, the meeting
Wow.
was,
No.
perfectly pleasant, and I think, she completely understood what our issues were.
Mhm.
But,
She may need some time to get it in place.
Yeah.
That's true, that's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, but also considering that the meeting broke up in a, flurry of requests from the other side of the alley about where is this, where is that, we've lost half of the stuff we need for our next 3 sessions. I think there's a certain amount of chaos over there that they're trying to get everything
Okay.
But yeah, she was very sensitive to our concerns.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it would have been an adversary. I would have been surprised if you had said yes.
I think actually, it sounds to me like you really developed a pretty good plan moving forward.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
The only thing that we've got to work out, and I can talk about this later maybe too, is that we've got to come up with a cutoff date as to at what point can they just suddenly throw these on us. We have to know in advance, just because of that, the whole scheduling conflict of Marcotte having to be, we were hearing with them that night, but so there was no scheduling conflict until they created it.
Yeah, no, I thought that
So,
was understood. That
right.
They were going to get hold of you and double check before they did that.
Right.
And that was, what was so surprising and unfortunate to me about having this suddenly appear.
Right.
No, you were supposed to talk to Jeff about that.
Right.
Because
I think in general, we are so, our attempt to appear and, to be business friendly, I feel that it's often lopsided. They want their public hearings as soon as possible, but yet they don't get their applications in timely or any of their information,
Right.
Until the last minute. And then somehow, we're the shrew if we don't, hurry up and get it done for them. So, at a certain level, I'm tending to think, well, all right, something can wait maybe another 2 weeks, sometimes.
Well, now that it seems when we do all that and we accommodate and we get things approved, they never come to fruition, and we get a year later revision.
Yeah.
And how many times do we have special meetings and
Yeah, jump through all.
this is probably the most accommodating board, I will say that publicly, probably in the city of Holyoke. As far as holding special meetings and getting out of work early or whatever we gotta do
Right.
to try to get things done.
Yeah.
And try to be sensitive to the fact that, we wanna do the right thing, but yet it just seems like it is very lopsided.
Another thing to consider too is in the future review of your rules and regulations to look at the submittal dates versus when the public hearings can actually happen. And that could be something that can be addressed there, just because I know right now, like for instance, the 2 plans that are submitted to you this evening, they were just given to us at by 4:30 on last Thursday. But now already we've got, City Hall was closed yesterday, that kind of thing. We've got to have a full review of 7 departments by the 25th. And, we're all, it can be tricky at times.
No.
It can be tricky
I
at
just don't
times.
think that's reasonable. I think to say to them, we're sorry, we need more time is gonna, from my perspective, I think it needs to happen a little more often, not to be, unreasonable, but sometimes sometimes I don't feel like I have enough time to, really process the project appropriately.
Yeah, well, and that,
And due diligence on, getting the information that I need.
well, and that is one of the reasons that, I at least find myself so often saying, okay, we need to continue this because now we've heard the presentation, now we have all of this new information in our laps, we have to go home and think about it.
Right.
Go and think about it and maybe ask intelligent questions at
Yeah.
the next meeting.
Yeah.
And
And we can't ask those meetings once we close.
Yeah. Yeah, and certainly people who are applying, giving us the stuff at the last minute have to be aware of that. You're not going to get it rubber stamped because you've had 48 hours there.
So concerning the email that I had forwarded you concerning available dates, I know I'd heard back from John and Chris. At this point,
I've had a problem with my email, so
okay.
I can look at them.
I guess just my question is at this point is there, I know that John cannot make it on the 9th, but as far as let's see, December 23rd,
Seriously?
I'm okay for it.
December 23rd,
Yep.
I'm okay.
Don't we have a joint meeting with,
Yeah, I think we have
we have they are hearing,
we don't have anything with them on December 23rd.
they are hearing, that's when they continued
Oh, right, yes.
this.
Yes.
Correct.
That's their deal, not ours. Yeah.
So the 9th of December you're talking about?
Yep.
At 6 o'clock?
Tentatively at this point, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we would, because December 9th, we've got the zone change special permit discussion with the ordinance committee at 6:30. We've got the Lyman Terrace discussion at 6:30, and we've got potentially the Pride redevelopment on Dwight Street at 7 o'clock.
All
So the
the
December
9th?
9th,
Yeah.
I can be here, and the 23rd as well, I can be here.
Okay.
Were there other dates?
It was going into January, the 13th and the 27th.
Okay.
The 13th.
Mark, you're all set for all those?
I don't believe I have any conflicts.
And you also said December 23rd, Jeff.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I don't have much of a night.
I mean, honestly, on the 23rd at this point, we do in fact have nothing scheduled. But it would be a case where if any of these meetings between November 25th and December 9th were to be continued, like for instance the Pride Station or Lyman Terrace again, I don't know, something like that, that could be a date that we could continue to, or we could just forego the 23rd meeting. I mean, it's up to you and your scheduling.
All right, so, yeah, I can make the 20,
Now, I'm all right for all of those dates with the caveat
Yeah,
that I've
I
got
do
a
too.
family situation going on and I may suddenly at the last minute
Mm-hmm.
have to cancel an event.
yeah, so as far as I know right now, yeah, unless there's some.
I would request that we don't meet prior to 6 o'clock until after the first of the year, at which time I'll be moving out of my Pelham office.
Okay.
It's just, to leave there at 3:30 in the afternoon, come home, hope to wolf something down,
Yeah.
and then get here. I get home about 4.
So we set with dates.
So we'll start with dates.
Okay, thank you.
And I think we have minutes to approve.
Yeah, in your packet there's only it's 1, 2, 3 sets. Yes.
I make a motion to approve the planning board meeting minutes from September 23rd, September 30th, and October 14th of 2014.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Is there any other business?
Unless anyone's got anything, I've got nothing.
I would entertain a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
That's one of the fun things about the A&R plan.